Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today, we're going to be talking about resistance and its opposite, which is like wholehearted givin'er. That's what I'll call it.
Great way to put it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Canadian. And before we do, of course, we're going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other in this podcast.
Okay. So I think this one will be a two-parter. And we'll start the way we always start, which is just finding your body connection, what might serve as an anchoring point for you right now. So what's maybe a sturdy feeling that you can connect to? For me, it's a few things, actually. I feel my leg pressed into the ottoman. I feel my other leg pressed into my leg, and I feel my hand on my foot. I'm a very sensory person, and I've learned that I need a lot of anchoring points sometimes. So just finding what yours is in this moment and bringing some awareness to your breath. And we'll begin with just letting your tongue go on a little adventure, poking around in your mouth. Just notice the different sensations of that. I find I really enjoy this feeling, and I don't do this often. And every time I do it, I remember, oh, that feels really nice. I feel a stretch in my face that I wouldn't otherwise get to feel. So just poke around, see what happens, see what you notice. Get familiar with what feels good, what feels weird, what doesn't feel good. Maybe you even notice some funny sounds that you're making. And then I'll shift us slowly. And if you need to open the mouth up and give the jaw a stretch, do that as well. I'm noticing my neck wants some movement. So it's really just about following the impulses that come up for you. And we'll shift into the second part, which I can't really tell you any scientific background as to why this is helpful or good to do, but it is passed down, I think, from generations in my family, and it must have something, I don't know, to do with Chinese medicine, acupressure points, the meridian, something. But you take your tongue and you just trace circles around your mouth, like around your teeth, like the bottom lip. And go all the way around. I'm watching Stephanie as she does it. And then you can go the other way. Well, it was a lot harder. I think this stimulates a lot of different nerve endings. I don't know what else it does, but I was saying things that old Asian grandpas teach you probably have some useful benefit. So this is something my dad taught us to do when we were really young. And sorry, Dad, if I don't remember why. You told us, I'm sure. But I'm just bringing it back today. For fun. And it's funny because growing up, I never felt free to be silly. But I feel like you can't not be silly doing something like this. I'm watching you. I'm watching Steph do it. And I like watching how your nose changes shape when you're just neat. Well, I feel like our face and jaw hold a lot of tension. This is a part of the body I don't think that gets very much attention. I think one of our friends was telling me before that you can go to places where they will put gloves on their hands and do an internal oral massage for you. And I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing. And get into all the nooks and crannies that you wouldn't be able to reach. And And she's like, you should try it sometime. She's like, even try it on yourself. And I remember doing that, like washing my hands and like just poking my hands and like pulling and stretching and poking, and it feels really good. So when you don't want to shove your hands in your mouth, this is an alternative.
I like it. I really like bringing consciousness and attention to different parts of my body and in novel ways. That's neat.
Yes. I want to speak to that for a second. We just did one of our priming the body for peace calls, and someone, we always ask people, what did you notice, right? When you did that body practice, what did you notice? And someone had said, I notice that sometimes I feel good after the practice and other times I don't. And I judge myself and tell myself I should. So we had a nice conversation around that. And what you just said reminds me of that these practices are not meant to feel good or make us feel better. You might feel better, but it's about bringing consciousness and awareness to different parts of our body, noticing what feels good, doesn't. How does our body tell us that something feels good or doesn't? How does your body tell you want more of something or less of something or not at all? Those are great things to become aware of. And you can do that with a simple practice of poking your tongue around.
Yeah. Yeah. All of these little tidbits help you gain all this knowledge and self-discovery of what feels good and what feels bad in your body, and why and where you might experience resistance, which is actually the example you give of this woman sharing that sometimes it feels good and sometimes it feels bad, and she finds that level of shoulds kind of interrupts her process. That's more or less what I wanted to talk about today, and how you approach it. So resistance is anything that's inhibiting you from your goal or your desire, right? I like to think about, there are things that I want and there are things that I want to want or think I should want. So when it's something that I want and my body and my mind are completely aware that this is the target, there's nothing that's going to throw me off. Nothing can get in my way. No information or shoulds will slow me down. Even something impossible becomes possible, right?
You're in the flow.
You're in the flow, right? I hope listeners have had that experience. And I think it can be a rarity compared to the more typical body-mind sensation of experiencing blocks or fears or intrusive thoughts that stop you from getting to where you want to be, or that stop you from even identifying where you want to be because you're so blocked by shoulds and things that you think you want or you want to want, but there's some gap, right? So in the case of this woman, what she experienced and what could fold out into her life is that if she's learning body connection practices and her experience has been something is going to get in the way of this feeling good, that might stop her from wanting to do body connection practices, right? Or she could go, what is the natural thing? Where does resistance cease? What part of my body could I connect with right now that just feels good and nothing will be inhibited, you know? And I think your way of talking about these things and thinking about these things is incredibly helpful for people. So I want them to hear it.
Okay. So let me see if I can bring myself back to that place and connect in with that. The shoulds. I think, one of my responses to the shoulds is to let it be there, right? I notice that sometimes body practices feel good, and I notice that sometimes they don't, and I tell myself they should. And I'm learning to be with that. And I'm learning to open to the possibility that if I'm gentler with myself, that things will flow more naturally. Right? That's the way I enjoy talking to myself. And that's the way I enjoy coaching people to learn how to practice with themselves, is to not make it wrong that a should came up, and also connect into what are you open to the possibility of? I'm open to the possibility that I could be okay if I don't feel good doing a body practice. I'm open to the possibility that if I'm kinder to myself, I might not feel all stressed out about doing body practices. Right? So you don't even have to believe in that possibility yet. I like to ask people, is there like even just 1% of you open to that possibility? And I've never really heard anyone say, no, there's no part of me open to that possibility that one day it could, or one day I might experience that. And leaning into that, which I find helps us connect into a deeper desire, right? You have a deeper desire that you're kinder to yourself. You have a deeper desire that you don't have to be guided by all your shoulds. So let's connect with that part of you. Let's let the part of you that's judging yourself be there too. And also let's connect to the part that's open to a different possibility.
Mm-hmm. So important. I think, at least in our culture and Western society, the norm, the sort of popular go-to is to push through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that inhibits our ability to connect with our real desire. I think that pops us on the should train, and then we push through any blocks that come up, and we want to attain the goal no matter what. And then we find ourselves in places where we've attained goals that unconsciously weren't even our goals. They were shoulds from somewhere else that has nothing to do with what feels right for us and true. And I can hear my inner critic in her new French accent that I assigned her this morning saying, "Oh, gentle, why? Just push, just go, just do." And I think in the end, for me, that has not been helpful. For me, that's a debilitating mode of thought. And I can certainly push through, but I'm not going to end up somewhere that I actually feel good being.
Yeah, and it's about pushing through is a superpower. There's nothing wrong with pushing through. It's about knowing and discerning when to use that superpower, with whom, to what degree, for how long, for what purpose, right? But if your only superpower that you use is pushing through, that's going to leave you with some negative impacts in your life or relationships, right? So I feel like everything we do, it just has an impact. And it's really helpful to start noticing what is the impact. All right. So pushing through could be a really important skill for someone to practice who tends to give up more quickly, right? Or tends to be stuck in the emotion of it all and the thoughts of it all, and they don't actually move towards action. But someone who uses that superpower a lot and pushes through almost all the time and isn't as connected with following the body's wisdom and what the body needs in the moment might need to practice a different muscle, a different superpower, growing that one of let's just stop. Let's give up. Because knowing when to give up is also an important life skill. Like if you just push through no matter how horrible things are, it doesn't actually give you the best, most fulfilling life. But if you never learn to walk away from something, you never learn to pause or take a break, you never learn to say, you know what, I tried that way, it's not giving me what I want, it's time to like pause and reassess and change paths, change course, then that superpower of pushing through isn't super helpful for you. Right. Yeah. So learning discernment was a big thing for me and took a lot of practice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I find the pushing through also for me leads to collapse. My resistance, even though I'm pushing through it, is going to start showing up in other ways in my life. I'm going to become ill. I'm going to become exhausted. I'm going to become antisocial. It's still there. We've just hidden it temporarily.
Yeah. And what's really neat is, you said earlier in your little French accent, like, what's the point of being gentle, right? Just push through. And there's science. Science is the point. Science tells us now if you're already dysregulated, if you're already stressed out, adding more of that stressful shoulding voice and pushing through is actually going to dysregulate you even more. Right? So if you want to be able to do well and function optimally, it's to learn that your nervous system probably needs a break and a reset and a little bit of regulation right now so that you can function well. And then from that place, you can go again and try again. Right? So there's going to be a time and place for pushing through and a time and place for taking a break, bringing in some regulation to the system, and then trying again. I remember a really helpful thing when I was just parenting my boys when they're very young was, if you see a child who's frustrated, and this was in the context of raising children, but I think it applies to all human beings. If you see a child who's frustrated, here's 3 questions. I think they were, would you like to take a break? Would you like to try again? Or would you like to ask for help? Right? I see that you're having a hard time, and that's okay. Would you like to take a break? Would you like to try again? Or would you like to ask for help? And I started doing that with my kids, and all of a sudden you could see their frustration shift. They're like, oh, there's something else that I could do right now other than getting more and more and more frustrated. Okay. Right. And those are some great questions to ask ourselves. I find that a lot of us probably don't ask ourselves those questions when we're frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we just get overwhelmed with all of the potential shoulds. And I really like that way of chunking down 3 options that feel doable, that just in itself regulates your nervous system and shuts down that anxiety response.
Yeah, because when you have choice, right? Choice is something that I think helps regulate.
Yeah. And this is a choice most of the time, right? That's the other piece I want to talk about is there are going to be times when life or the universe or your family or whatever present you with situations through which you must push. There is no choice but to push through. So subjecting yourself to that pushing through on a regular day-to-day basis when it isn't necessary, I think eats up your pool of superpower capacity, right? You're squandering all your ability to push through in situations where it's not necessary and where what the universe is offering
save it for something
good.
good.
Right? Yeah. And enjoy the downtime. I really had to learn that doing real estate, that there are going to be boom times and slow times. And if I'm trying to force a boom when there's no boom happening, I mean, that might be great for your bottom line, but not your like physical, mental, and emotional bottom line. So I started using those downtimes in deep trust that those were times for me to relax and regroup and recoup so that I could use my superpowers during boom time.
Well, and initially, it might not seem to be good for your bottom line to take care of yourself, but long term, it's actually better for your bottom line, right?
Yeah.
I used to work in the corporate world, and I think I saw very clearly at a very young age something that I didn't understand that other people couldn't see. I was like, even if all you care about in your business is making money, you would make more money if you treated people better. I didn't understand why people didn't understand that. I mean, you're going to have less turnover. You're going to invest less in training. The morale is going to be higher. You're going to waste less time in HR. People actually want to do good work for you. What part of that doesn't make sense for the bottom line? And so, it's looking at either short-term fix or like long-term, what's helpful.
Mm-hmm. That right there, you just described like corporate resistance, right? We can know what is true and best, and all of these shoulds and must do's are going to crop up, even when it comes to like corporate policy of how they're going to operate. We can know that we need naps, that we're going to be crabby and less functional, but we just keep pushing through because we should be working or doing whatever the thing is. And we know now that it's not helpful. And the culture is still to do that. So that's going to be the voice that's running in your...
Totally. It's like going counterculture in order to sort of build a life that feels sustainable, fulfilling, enjoyable. right? And that actually more productivity comes from less pushing. I think a lot of Scandinavian countries have figured that out. Some countries in Europe have figured that out, of finding that balance of how much to work, right? If we work a little bit less, we're actually more productive, right? I remember living and working in the Netherlands, and I think they would just laugh at the North American culture, especially the American culture, of like, do you really think that sitting at your desk for 10 hours actually makes you more productive? Your staff are probably scrolling their phones and surfing the internet. How many of
Mhm.
those hours are actually productive hours, and how many disgruntled workers do you have staying extra late?
Yeah, indeed. That's all resistance right there, scrolling your phone. Great example of resistance to life or to the goal of working or whatever it is. And then recognizing that our bodies need and desire something different in order to get to that goal that we purport to want.
That took me actually like a really long time. I come from a real push through background. And I think a lot of people do. And then when I work with clients who, are from immigrant families, we talk about that a lot, because I think that's a common theme in immigrant families, that you just have to push through. You take whatever work you can get, you do it, and you don't complain, and you're not paying attention to how you're feeling emotionally or how your body is. You just push through. You got to make it. Your family's got to make it here. So there's an extra layer of pushing through that's really deeply ingrained, and I definitely had to learn like the importance of rest. And I feel like growing up, my parents very much pushed, or I felt a pushing, like sitting down was wasting time kind of thing. And what I think is funny now that my parents are not in that same survival mode phase of their life and their children are grown, is that they will be the ones sending me messages. Don't work too hard. Remember to take a break and take a rest, and all the money in the world can't be worth, being burnt out. Not that that's what I'm striving for, but, their perspective has really changed. And it's good to get those reminders.
Definitely. Yeah. I have a tremendous capacity to push through. And I've fooled myself about that in many ways. When we were setting up our program, it was my great joy to sit in front of the computer for 16 hours and not move and just churn it out, right? It feels very productive. It's working towards something. All of that feels really good. And there's a part of me that wanted to be more connected to my body than I had been previously in that sort of experience. And looking at how my resistance comes up can be really tricky, right? I've got a very tricky little ego going on. And so there'll be the things that make sense that also are forming resistance. They're toward the goal, but they're in the way of my overarching goal to do the thing and also be healthy and feel good, right? So a very normal activity is to plug in your computer to do your work, right? And I knew, hey, that is only serving my goal of getting the job done. But I want to be getting up and stretching. I want to be hydrating. I want to be going to the washroom, and I want to be feeding myself and moving my body, right? So what's one thing that I can do to fool myself into making that happen? Because I know I'll ignore it. And the simple thing is, don't plug in the computer. Every hour, the computer's going to go on a low battery, and I'm going to need to bring it into the other room where I've left the plug, so that I force myself into this position of having to take care of my body, right? So resistance that can seem on the surface to be a good thing,
Yeah.
you need to explore pretty deeply, because we're very crafty and creative
I
internally.
love your creativity in service of your deeper desire, right? Because you're like, oh, we're very crafty. Yes. And what are you going to use that craftiness for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it for your deeper desire, or that in between thing that just feels good in the moment? And this reminds me of, I don't know why in my mind, this is the label it always gets, but like, how do you set yourself up for success? Right. And you could easily be hard on yourself. Oh, like I ignore my body and all my needs and I just work and work. Or you could be like, I'm fantastic. I can go 16 hours and not take a break. But you didn't stop at shaming yourself. You didn't say, I suck at taking care of myself. I suck at taking breaks. I'm forever going to be disconnected from my body and just this workaholic that's really sort of disconnected. Like, that wasn't where you went. It wasn't where you landed and stayed. You were like, I have an old pattern of just working and pushing through. And I ignore whether I'm hungry. I don't bring in movement. I don't maybe eat well during that time. I'm just purely focused on work. That is the pattern. And, we talk often about learning to notice our patterns with compassion, right? There's no judgment. That is just the pattern. So we know now, if you were to not do anything different, that pattern is just going to run. And I have a deeper desire to do things differently. I have a deeper desire to feel differently while I work, to feel differently overall. And so one thing I will do to help me move towards that deeper desire is I will not plug in my laptop. That makes me so excited. Because these are the little things that people don't think make a difference. Mm-hmm. They make the hugest difference because they help you interrupt an old pattern.
Yeah. Huge.
Right? They help you boost you and nudge you towards a different pattern, a newer pattern, a pattern that's more aligned with what you deeply desire.
Yeah. I'm really big on making things easier for myself, making it easier to do the good things that I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I have the experience of other people not necessarily doing that. Like, okay, here's a simple thing. I will not do good things with my Vitamix blender unless it's on the counter. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. Some people might want it to be put away somewhere that you can't see it. I'm like, all the good things disappear from my mind if I cannot see them in front of my face. My vitamins and supplements need to be right exactly where I'm going to see them in the morning. I will not ever remember to take them out of a drawer, Yeah. And giving yourself those tiny gifts of ease.
Tiny gifts of ease. Can you please give yourself those tiny gifts of ease, but also start to learn what they are? Because we might not even know what they are. Because if you are used to living a life of shoulds, the things should be put away in the cupboard, then you would never have discovered that a tiny gift of ease for me is if I have the Vitamix on the counter, because I'm more likely to use it. Right? So for me, like with my little 5-minute journal that I like go into phases of using it and not using it over the years, but I know if I put it on my pillow with a pen already ready, I will use it.
Yeah.
But if it's like on the shelf, on the nightstand, there's no pen in sight, I'm just going to stare at the thing and it's not going to happen. And it's not because I suck, but it's just I'm distractible. It's not the easiest thing to do in that moment. I want easy.
Yeah.
Right. And especially at the end of the day, someone, when I was doing a lot of work on learning to shift habits and also taking into account the journey of mothering, it highlighted how many decisions you have to make in a day, right? Even if you take mothering out of the equation, like we're all having to make many decisions in the day. And choices. And so at some point you get exhausted. Like you said, save your energy for the stuff that's really important. But if you can make these other things more simple, and I don't have to decide whether I'm going to journal or not tonight, it's just write it on my pillow with the pen ready. Then I will take the 30 seconds it takes to write in a few reflections, a minute.
Yeah.
But if it's not there, and also if it's not there, I'm not hard on myself. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense I didn't do it. It was like on the bottom of the shelf. I'm probably not going to do it. Right? So knowing yourself, getting to know yourself helps you set up these gifts of ease.
Yeah. Decision exhaustion is a real thing also, science tells us. And by the end of the day, our reserves of good decision-making skills have left the building. So knowing ourselves is very important, and also recognizing like natural cycles to do with fluctuating hormones and endorphins. It is going to be harder for you to make a good choice at the end of the day than it is at the beginning of the day. These are important things to notice. And you said something that I love, which is that if I don't do it, Or if I need it to be easier, it doesn't mean that I suck. And believing ourselves, even unconsciously thinking that we suck or thinking we should be different than we are, is a tremendous embodiment and manifestation of resistance, right? It's debilitating. It paralyzes us a lot. So I would love if you could give some people the reframes that you are so wonderful at doing. There was a woman in the call who said something about we were asking people to notice what was good. And I think it's very natural for people to notice what's good and then for immediately a critical thought to swoop in on its heels. And I'd love for you to share how you reframe those kinds of thoughts.
Okay. So yeah, I think she said, I noticed the thing that was good or have a hard time noticing what's good. I tend to very quickly notice what's bad, what's not good. And I said, fantastic. What's good right now is that you notice when you have those thoughts that say things are not good. You're getting better at noticing when things are not good and those thoughts taking over your mind. That's excellent.
Yeah. This is such an open way of thinking about these things, right? I think it's easy to get into personal growth work with the feeling that we should be better or different. And the deeper truth is that we desire to feel good in our lives and relationships. And the way we discuss those things internally is really going to determine, I don't know, how quickly or to what depth you can get there. And the way you think about these things, I find to be very empowering.
Thank you. It took a lot of practice. It took sort of being tired of thinking that I suck all the time. Because I was like, this doesn't feel good. The deeper desire is to feel good and confident, right? And I knew that if that's my deeper desire, I have to work with that internal, inner critical voice that was so strong in me. And I had to just practice looking for what's good. Even if the what's good is all I can notice is the bad. That's great. You notice that.
Yeah.
Right? What's good is you have the courage to share that with the group. What's good is you're here practicing looking for the good, even if it's hard. Right? So,
it's getting deeply real with ourselves with a compassionate lens. There's so much power in that.
Yeah, like we said, what's good is now you have real awareness of a skill that's important for you to practice building. Right? Because we were working on something that included one component of what we were working on was be able to say out loud right now something that's good is. And then we added on to that. We had a bit of different body connection practices connected to that. And so, the response is fantastic. Now you know which element of the practice is one that's helpful to keep practicing. Right? Every time you notice something is hard, it's good information. Yeah. Sure Whereas before, I didn't even want to notice what was hard. I was just embarrassed and ashamed by noticing what's hard. Right now, I notice what's hard. I'm like, great. That gives me something to focus on.
Yeah.
It gives me something to look at and then chunk down into something smaller for me to practice.
Yeah.
But that was not my old mindset at all.
Right. Yeah. And that's all the shadow material that gets in the way of what you want and the end goal, which in this case might be feeling better in your body. You've got these trauma responses to having been shoulded and told what was what your entire life. And then you've got all of these shadowy thoughts that crop up in the interim. And so we are working towards chunking those down to bite-sized, doable things to be tackled compassionately.
And staying connected to this part is important because there's no desire to chunk down and keep doing, I find, if you're not connected to your deeper desire, right? Like on the weekend, I was telling you, I was having a few hard days and I just had these unhelpful ruminating thoughts in my mind. I could feel my body just feeling gross. And for me, I feel like it was a bit tied to just hormonal fluctuations in the month for me. But man, my head was strong in just wanting to keep me there. And then my body awareness was like, this feels gross. I don't want to stay here. I'm okay with my body naturally fluctuating and having a bit of a lower mood, but I could differentiate, and I could tell this is me adding extra. And I don't have to live with the extra. But if I don't do something about this autopilot I'm on, I'm going to be living in the extra miserableness, and it's not going to feel good. But I had no actual in the moment real desire to like do the work it took to shift myself out. I sort of just wanted to pout and have someone else fix it and make it better for me. But I also knew that is not my deepest desire, right? And I also knew I wasn't in that state where I needed that. Sometimes we're in a state where you really do need somebody else to help you co-regulate out of a situation. I knew I wasn't at that point. But I also knew, I don't want to do the practices that I know will help. Like, I get that too.
Yeah.
But what I did was I connected to a deeper desire, right? So I held one part, which is right now I feel really crappy. And I have a deeper desire to feel more relief and to feel like my mind being just not so dark and heavy. And so I will. So I love this sentence. Like, I feel this way, and I also have a deeper desire for, and so I will. And my so I will is so I will do this practice where I say right now something that's good is, and then right now something I feel my body touching is, and right now something I see is. And the first couple rounds, I still was like, but I was like, no, my deeper desire is to feel better. And I know that this will help me. And so I just sort of was on robotic mode for a little bit until I started to feel the shift. And I started to say, right now something that's good in my life is, and it's good because, and I could feel my face starting to shift. I could feel like a gentle smile coming when I would say this one thing was good. And at the beginning, it was like, right now what's good is like, I have a roof over my head and I'm not outside in -16. Like, it was that basic, but eventually it shifted. And if it didn't shift, that'd be okay too. But what was cool and what was helpful was to stay connected to my deeper desire of feeling better. If I couldn't stay connected to that or didn't even have it like on my radar, it's so much easier to go back to, I feel shitty right now.
Yeah.
I feel gross. I want to feel sorry for myself. What a waste of a night. And then all the thoughts keep coming.
Yeah.
Right.
All the thoughts keep coming. I think we can get so caught up in our heads that we mistake feeling good for like thinking healthy thoughts. And what you're describing is body sensation, right? The deep desire you're talking about, the feeling better, is something that neither of us would have been able to connect with many years ago because we were not aware of our bodies at all, right? We're all mostly aware of our minds until you wake up to this enormous source of information and feeling that the mind is attached to.
Yeah, it's a whole different life when you get to use the information of your body and use desire. How do you desire to feel? And what one small thing can I do right now that moves me more towards that desire?
Yeah.
Or at the very least, doesn't move me towards the thing that feels horrible.
Yeah. And baby steps, right? So when I'm talking about resistance and not resistance, and you say, what's one thing I could do right now? It's something that has to be something you can actually do right now and that would feel good and accessible to do, right? And if the choice you're giving yourself feels like a bit of a hurdle, I mean, if you've got the energy to jump over a hurdle, great. But if anything's going to stop you, chunk it down till nothing will stop you.
Yeah. And like, I was doing things like, that's why I love this practice. And that's what, I think everyone was saying today during this practice. What a great practice, because it's doable, right?
Yeah.
Even in, in your mind's in a dark, heavy place, it's doable to push your hand into your leg.
Yeah.
It's doable to like look up and look at something. Right. And at the beginning, you just need something doable. You don't need something that's going to be earth shattering and like, bring you butterflies and unicorns and golden lights. Like, that's not realistic. Just doing something different that's doable and not adding to the misery.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about using these practices to interrupt the pattern. My pattern was strong that night. Like, let's go to everything that's horrible. And like, this is when I know like I am on fire in not a good way, which is every time I think of something good, the inner judge that's like, well, yeah, you know what? You know what's shitty about that?
Yeah.
Right? And we have that in us, the part that wants to counter the part that can see something good. When we're in one of those moods, that judge is strong and it's going to find something wrong with the thing that's good. And I let that be okay. Just say the thing that's good, report what I feel my body touching, report what I see, and keep doing it over and over again until I notice a shift. And sure enough, I noticed a shift.
Yes. There it is. Maybe you could walk us through that practice to close.
Okay, that sounds nice.
Before we do that, though, I want to let people know that this is what we do in our program. So, in G's case, she had this hard couple of days and worked through this specific set of prompts and activities that addressed her needs in the moment. We do this practice live in our program, Priming the Body for Peace. And we also make space for you guys if you have a specific situation coming up for you that you want a supportive practice to work through. We will tailor that for you in the moment and walk through it as well. So we get to experience it in our bodies, not just in our theoretics department upstairs.
The theoretics department. I have a very busy theoretics department.
Yes, indeed.
I think my body department was like empty,
Ooh,
barren,
unstaffed. Yeah.
very unstaffed. Yeah. Okay, so this practice, I like to give the bum a wiggle. Just feel where you're sitting on or laying on, or maybe the feet a little stomping around if you're standing. And the first prompt is, right now, something that is good is, can be anything. Just saying that out loud. Right now, something that is good is.
Right now, something that is good is there is art on my walls that I love.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is a little bit of a more advanced practice, but if you want to try adding it in, just feel that something that is good in your body and be with that sensation for an extra breath. If that part feels too hard, that's okay. Don't do it. And then the next part is, right now, something I feel my body touching is.
I feel my body touching my meditation pillow.
Mm-hmm. And again, the extra add-on, it's like the bonus. Like, would you like guacamole with that?
Yes.
It's like, can you feel your butt on the pillow and be there for a full breath? You can also say no to the guacamole, right? And then the next piece is, right now, something that I see is.
Something that I see is a box of Kleenex.
Mm-hmm. And you can look at that box of Kleenex and be there for a full breath if you want, or you can let your mind go to wherever else it wants to go. And that's it. And I take a little moment to notice how hard or easy that was, how it felt in your body, whether it felt doable or not. And that is one way to interrupt an old pattern. All right, if you want to go straight back to rumination, go straight back. I always say to people, go straight back. Let that be okay. What you've done, though, is you've interrupted the old pattern. You're starting to lay a new pathway for another option, if you so choose.
Yes. Yeah. We've got bodies primed for stress and rumination, and we are wanting this global movement towards ease and flow and body connection and truth. What a delight. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Gigi.
A delight. You're welcome.
Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I don't think so. Just, I have this old saying when the boys were little, when I put them down for a nap, happy nappy. So I just want to say, happy practicing.
Oh, yeah. Happy practicing, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for being with us. As always, please like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.